So I heard you guys were down at Scott Carson's thing as well.
Oh yeah, down in San Antonio, that was a blast.
Was it? Yeah, I really like Scott. We've worked well together. So
Yeah, Scott's a good guy. So
yeah, he actually used to use another IRA company, so I kind of stole him away from them.
who
Kind
did?
of, kind of fought. Scott did. He used to use some other guys I know a lot, and wasn't really familiar with us until I kind of prodded him a little bit.
It must be a Texas.
Forced our information on him.
Yeah, it's kind of a Texas thing, huh?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I use that. I mean, I use that as a selling point. I'm like, Scott, we're right here in your backyard. Why aren't you using this? He was
Exactly.
using some other guy's Mid-Atlantic or something.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started recording stuff. I want to thank Nate here with Quest IRA. My name is Rich Brewer. I'm with Jackie Stark, and we're part of Note Brew. And I just want to thank Nate and the whole Quest team for helping put this together and help hosting us. And I'm going to give it to Nate for a little bit here and let him go through his presentation, and then we'll wrap up with ours and kind of go from there. So, Nate,
All right.
you have the floor.
Well, thank you guys, and I appreciate you guys inviting myself and Quest IRA to participate. This is obviously something that we like to talk about, obviously from a different perspective. But I have a little presentation here for the people that may be new to this, and I hope this is beneficial to you guys. And if you have questions, I believe we probably will have Q&A at the end. Or if not, I have my email address for anybody that wants more information about my part of the presentation. So, excuse me. So like I mentioned, my name is Nate Hare with Quest IRA, and what I'm going to be talking about is using self-directed IRAs to purchase promissory notes. And it's a very hot topic right now, especially with the instability of the stock market. A lot of people are looking for alternative investments, and most people don't realize that there's other opportunities for investments out there besides just the typical stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, and those types of things. So again, we're going to be talking a little bit about what Quest does and what we administrate as self-directed IRAs. Before we get into it, though, I just have to give you our disclaimer. Quest IRA is a neutral third party. We don't give any tax, legal, or investment advice, nor do we endorse any products or services. So all the information that I'm presenting here is for educational purposes only. We always encourage those individuals or those investors to consult with their attorneys, accountants, and financial advisors before entering into any type of investment. And I always have to have this disclaimer up there because if anybody knows our president and founder, Quincy Long, he's a real estate attorney, and he always slaps my hand every time I don't have the disclaimer up there. So for those of you who know Quincy, we'll probably have a chuckle about that. So I always like to start my presentations with a little illustration. And for most people, this illustration rings true, and you guys understand what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about traditional custodians. And traditional custodians are those guys that you see on commercials, and you drive by their offices every day, you see their buildings, and it's guys like Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Merrill Lynch, all these types of guys that we consider our traditional custodians. Because what they do is they hold traditional investments. And those traditional investments are things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, all the types of things that we're familiar with. And in this illustration, it kind of shows our financial advisors and stockbrokers looking down at us like we're this little kitty, and they look at us and they tell us never ever think outside the box, right? And that box is the box of traditional investments that we're always sold and told to believe will give us that big bucket of retirement money at the end of the road, and never think outside of that, right? Ride the highs and lows of the stock market, they tell you. Dollar cost average, buy low, sell high, all these types of things that we're taught will get us to our true retirement goals. And I think that for the majority of us, we realize that doesn't hold water today. Okay, we've seen the faults in the stock market, and we've seen the instability in it. But the fact of the matter is, most of us still invest in those types of things, and it's simply because we don't know that there's other options out there for us. And part of the reason is because our traditional custodians don't tell us about these other options. Why? Because it's obviously no financial benefit to them to tell us that there's other options out there because they don't make their commissions anymore. And it doesn't make them bad guys. This is just the way of the world. This is how it works. Guys like Fidelity and Charles Schwab, they're paid a commission to sell us investments. Whether or not those investments are good ones, that's how they make their money and put food on the table for their families. Okay? So most of us go around thinking that you have to think outside the box when you're thinking about investing in alternative assets or non-traditional investments. And that's one of the things that Quest holds. But truthfully, you don't have to think outside the box when we're talking about other types of investments. You just have to realize that the box is bigger than you think. And again, the box is bigger than you think when you go out and you educate yourself and find out that there's truly all sorts of options when you're talking about investing with your IRA or investing with your retirement account. There's all sorts of investment options out there for you. You just have to know where to go find them. Okay? So Quest's philosophy is you don't have to think outside the box. You just have to realize that the box is bigger than you think. And it's much bigger when you know that there's additional investment options out there to you, and I'll kind of go over that here in a minute. So first, what is a self-directed IRA? A lot of people have a misconception as to what a self-directed IRA is. I get this call every day. Every day I get one person that at least asks me this question. Hey, I was looking to open up a self-directed IRA, and one of your staff sent me an application, but it's not a self-directed IRA at all. It says traditional IRA, Roth IRA, or SEP IRA. I wanted one of those self-directed IRAs. And I always have to explain to them that self-directed is just a marketing term. There really actually is no legal difference between a self-directed IRA and any other IRA. Truly, all IRAs are self-directed to an extent because you do get to pick the options. You do get to pick the investments to a certain extent. But the word self-directed or the term self-directed, it's simply a marketing term. It's a made-up name, okay? And the reason why we use it in our field is because we believe it's a truly self-directed account because you do have to pick the investments. We can't pick the investments for you. So that's why we use it in our field to call it a self-directed IRA. But truthfully, IRAs are governed by the same set of rules no matter where you go. If you have an IRA at Fidelity and you have an IRA at Quest, those two IRAs are the exact same vehicle. The only difference is the companies restrict you from holding certain types of investments, but it's not the IRA that restricts you from holding different types of investments. To give you an example, an account agreement at Fidelity or Charles Schwab will say you're allowed to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs. Our account agreement at Quest will say you're allowed to invest in anything that the IRS allows, provided it's not a prohibited transaction. And there's very, very few circumstances that can create what's called a prohibited transaction. But again, all the investment options are the same when you're looking at the rules from the IRA's perspective. It's simply the companies that restrict you from certain investments because they don't hold certain types of investments. Okay? So the difference is Quest holds private investments, whereas Fidelity and Charles Schwab hold public investments. So what would be the benefits of a self-directed IRA? Okay? The main benefit really, or one of the main benefits is diversification. So whether or not you understand real estate or notes or any type of other investment, and a lot of our clients are not real estate investors by trade, but they like real estate as an investment or notes as an investment because it allows them to diversify their assets. And with diversification, I'm not talking about diversification in the stock market because I think everybody was around in 2008. You can't be well diverse in the stock market when everything is plummeting. If the stock market is going down, all your investments are going down. It's hard to counterweight that. But a lot of investors use things like real estate or notes secured by real estate as just a means to diversify their assets because real estate or notes secured by real estate are considered what's called a tangible investment. They're an investment that doesn't evaporate and disappear on you, right? Whereas a paper investment in the stock market can completely disappear on you. If you're invested in a stock, in a company, and that company goes belly up, your investment goes belly up. Your investment disappears with the wind. But if you own things that are tangible, like real estate, notes secured by real estate, those are investments that do not disappear. You can light a house to the ground, and you have things that prevent that because you have insurance that can cover losses because of the tangible investment. Even if the house burned down that you had security with, and you didn't have insurance on that, maybe you missed that part of the class, you still have land underneath your investments. and land's not going anywhere. So there's a big difference between a tangible investment like real estate and notes secured by real estate versus just a paper investment in the stock market. So again, a self-directed IRA lets you diversify and have some of your investments in public assets, but then some of your investments in private assets that won't evaporate on you. One of the main benefits, though, is the tax savings. Obviously, IRAs get better tax privileges than we do as individuals, and they're set up specifically for that purpose because, truthfully, Americans are terrible savers. We're not taught to save very well. So one of the good gifts that the government did give us is the formation of IRAs. And depending on the type of IRA you have, your IRA's investments or profits grow either tax-deferred or completely tax-free. So either one you have, that's a benefit in itself. Even if you have a tax-deferred IRA, that means that you don't pay taxes as you go. So you can reinvest all of your capital into the next investment without having to pay taxes on a yearly basis or on an investment basis. You don't pay taxes until the very end of the road when you start distributing money out of the IRA, preferably at retirement age. But if you have something like a Roth IRA or a health savings account or a Coverdell education savings account, those profits can grow completely tax-free. And that's a benefit that we definitely do not get as individuals. So you can see that utilizing an IRA to your advantage can help you by working less years. You can retire early if you utilize an IRA for its tax purposes. Because again, if you're doing every investment that you do in your personal name or your LLC's name, you will give 30 to 40% of your profits to Uncle Sam. And that will force you to work longer. So again, a lot of people seek out the IRAs or the self-directed IRAs strictly for a means of helping them retire early by getting that tax-deferred or tax-free treatment. And then one of the things that we love to talk about at Quest IRA is just the social implications of your investments. And this is not something that you're going to hear in every presentation, but the thing that we love to talk about at Quest is what is your investment doing overnight? We kind of have a running joke that if you don't know what your retirement account is doing at midnight, it's just like your teenage daughter. If it's out doing something, it's probably out doing something that you don't want it to do if you don't know what it's doing. And truthfully, if you ask most Americans, well, what is their retirement doing? What companies are they invested in? What mutual fund do they have? What companies do the mutual funds hold? Most people can't even tell you what the name of the mutual fund is. Maybe they know the name of the mutual fund, but they can't tell you the names of the companies that are in the mutual fund. And even less of a percent of people can tell you what those companies do. If they're involved in child labor, if they're dumping crude oil in the ocean. Really, we just get a statement, most Americans get a statement for what their retirement account's doing, and we just file it in a drawer. And that's a tough thing to swallow. When really, you should know what your investments are doing at night. And when you have the opportunity to self-direct an IRA, for the most of us, we know exactly what those investments are doing because we picked them. We picked the investment. And a lot of us invest in things like real estate or notes secured by real estate, and we know the address of that house. We know the address of the house we bought or the address of the house that we bought a note on. We know exactly where it is. We can drive by it. We can touch it. We can feel it. At midnight, we know exactly what it's doing. So the social implications is something we always like to talk about because it allows you to invest your retirement funds back into your community. And believe it or not, most of the people that can invest in these things that they understand, that's a private investment, they're putting money back into the community, improving, taking non-performing investments and making them performing again. Taking notes off of a bank's hands and making it a performing note, or taking a property off of a bank's hands and rehabbing it and putting a family in there and doing all these wonderful things that come with real estate investing or note investing, is that you're buying non-performing assets and making them performing again, and ultimately creating the American dream by doing that. So I like to talk about that and like to touch about that because it's not always about the dollar signs. But it is about what our money is doing for us. And if you took apples for apples and you asked someone if they can make 10% in the stock market or they can make 10% investing back in their community, what would they rather do? I think most people would say they'd rather put it back in their community if it was going to be the same, return or even more. But again, it goes back to the fact that most people don't even realize they have other options available to them. So what types of plans can be self-directed? Just like I said at the beginning, IRAs are the same no matter where you go. So we have 7 types of plans here at Quest that you can self-direct. that you can use to pick your own investments and invest in private investments. The personal plans would be your traditional IRAs and your Roth IRAs. Traditional IRAs are the largest source of Americans' funds, and that's because it includes our rollovers from old 401k plans at an old employer, maybe a 403b plan. If you worked for the government, you may have had a 457 plan. All these employer-sponsored plans that we have set up by our employer or our job are typically tax-deferred accounts. And when you leave that job or have separation of service, that tax-deferred account rolls into what's called a traditional IRA. Okay, and those could be self-directed. A lot of people like to seek out the Roth IRA, however, because the Roth IRA is as our CEO Nathan Long would say, it's the sexy IRA. It's the IRA that grows completely tax-free. It's the IRA that sets people free and allows people to retire early. There's a lot of benefits to a Roth IRA, and there's a big misconception that the Roth IRA is the only one that can be self-directed. Because if you go online and read all sorts of articles, there's a lot of gurus that talk about self-directing the Roth IRA, and it's just an option. You can self-direct all types of plans, but the Roth IRA is obviously the one that's the one that's sought out after the most. And truthfully, anybody nowadays can have a Roth IRA as long as you have earned income. In 2010, the government took off the cap, the income cap, for what's called a Roth conversion. So anybody, if you have a traditional IRA now, regardless of how much money you make, you can convert that traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. Doesn't matter how much you make, and that cap has been lifted again since 2010. And we actually have a class on this on how to analyze a Roth conversion to make sure that opportunity makes sense for you. But again, these are the personal plans that can be self-directed, traditional IRA and Roth IRA. If you're self-employed, you have additional options for self-direction. You can self-direct a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, or even an individual 401k, and that 401k can have a Roth component to it. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is a whole other class in itself, but these types of accounts allow for the largest contributions, upwards of $53,000 depending on your income. So if you're looking to shelter more money away from Uncle Sam, an employer plan is maybe something you want to consider. And again, this is for self-employed individuals, real estate and professional real estate investors, CPAs, realtors, accountants, all these people that work for themselves have additional options for self-direction. And then we have our specialty plans, which would be the Coverdell Education Savings Account and the Health Savings Account. These are two accounts that are growing in popularity, but still underutilized in my opinion, especially the Coverdell Education Account. So this is an account that can also be self-directed. But the benefit for the Coverdell Education Account is the funds in that account, or the profits from your investments, can be used to pay for qualified education expenses completely tax-free. So, and this goes from kindergarten all the way through college for those kids or grandkids. I would be willing to bet that most Americans are not paying their education expenses tax-free. Most of the people are doing what they were taught, which is work more hours, save 10%, and after you've been taxed or after Uncle Sam gets his hand on all your money, then you pay your bills. And bills could be tuition and things like that. That's part of that, of being a parent. But if you could really understand the Coverdell Education Account, you could save more money for yourself by just using your investments to pay your children's way through elementary school, high school, and college. And it's very broad on the expenses you can pay. Things like computers, books, uniforms, tuition, obviously. All these types of things can be used and paid through a Coverdell Education Account tax-free. And the Health Savings Account, we actually call this account the best of both worlds because when you put money into a Health Savings Account, you get an immediate tax deduction. And when you use it for qualified health expenses, it comes out completely tax-free. So it's like a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA combined. And we actually have a special class on this as well, taught by our president, H. Quincy Long, called HSAs and ESAs, if anybody is interested in watching that on our website, questira.com. So these are two figures that I like to throw out there to people, and these are rounded down or rounded up, but it's pretty close to these figures. And the first one is $24 trillion, and that's trillion with a T. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of zeros. This is the amount of retirement funds that are currently out there for Americans. Okay, $24 trillion is what's saved up in retirement accounts combined. $8 trillion is what's currently in IRAs combined. Now, when I ask people and travel around the country and ask people what percent do you think of those figures is self-directed into things like promissory notes, real estate, and those types of investments, private investments, how much of that is self-directed? I get all sorts of figures, anything from 50% to 10% to 20%, and it's pretty shocking to see how low the number is. And the number of the percent that is self-directed of that figure is 2%. 2% of those total figures is self-directed into private investments, and which is shocking. And that tells you right there that 98% of America's wealth is invested into the stock market. Well, when I ask people, do you think 98% of Americans understand the stock market, people get a big chuckle. And I think people laugh at that. And then you ask another question, do you think 98% of our financial advisors or 98% of our stockbrokers understand the stock market? And I get an even bigger laugh. Again, this just goes to show you that most of Americans don't know that there's additional options out there to them. They don't know that there's other investment options out there besides just the stock market, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. So it's a little bit shocking when I show that figure. So what can you invest in with a self-directed IRA? Well, there's actually only two things you can't invest in with a self-directed IRA. So when you read the IRS code, it actually doesn't tell you what you can invest in. It just strictly tells you what you can't invest in. And the only two things you cannot invest in are life insurance, term life insurance contracts, and collectibles. That's it. Two things. Two things they tell us we cannot use an IRA to purchase: life insurance, term life insurance, and collectibles. Anything else is allowable. So basically, if you can hold title to something, you can own it with your IRA and have all that tax benefits of the tax-deferred treatment or the tax-free treatment. So here's some of our most common investment options. And this is just with us as a company. Single-family, multifamily homes, unimproved land, tax liens, foreclosures, condominiums, commercial properties, investments into private companies like LLCs, joint ventures, limited partnerships. All these investments are available, and even more outside of this. And you can see there that I have one investment that's in red. And it's a good thing that Rich and Jackie put this presentation on, because this is nailing it right on the head, because most of our clients actually invest in notes. And it's actually pretty shocking. When I show this list of people, and I don't have that obviously highlighted in red as a kind of a hint, I ask people, what do you think we hold the most at Quest? And a lot of people, although they say the first one right at the top, single-family, multifamily homes. When truthfully, that's only about 12% of our holdings. And again, people get the misconception because everyone likes to talk about real estate, but truthfully, not everybody is a real estate investor, not by trade. Not everybody is out there on a day-to-day basis looking at real estate deals. However, most of our clients like real estate as an investment, but they do it more of a passive manner. They either lend to real estate investors or buy existing promissory notes, because notes is a more passive way to invest in real estate where you don't necessarily have to own anything. Sometimes you do end up taking property back, but again, it's a little bit more of a passive investment by just investing in notes. And truthfully, 47% of our clients own notes, whether they're secured notes or unsecured notes. Most of them are secured notes, obviously secured by real estate, but 47% of our clients, our 9,000 clients, own notes. And again, it's just a way to participate in real estate without all the work and the headaches of dealing with a lot of things that real estate come with. So I appreciate Jackie and Rich bringing me on for this, and I think this is their lead-in to talk about notes specifically and what they offer and the ideas that they have. If anybody has any questions for me, though, I'll be around at the end, and you can always email me at nate@questira.com or give me a call at 1-855-FUN-IRAs, or you can visit our website, questira.com, if anybody has any immediate needs. So, Rich, Jackie, you there?
Yeah, that's 47%. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Is in that I didn't realize it was that much. So, kudos.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Well, my name is Rich Brewer, and I'm with Jackie Stark, and together we are Note Brew. We invest in defaulted real estate mortgage notes, kind of a twist. Just we don't do your typical hard money stuff. We buy defaulted stuff that's basically by bad debt. So just kind of getting started here, we're kind of going to give you an introduction to the notes, why invest in notes, and getting started. I want to do my little disclaimer as well, as Nate did. This is an informational webinar. Any views expressed during this presentation are solely the views of the presenting party and do not represent nor are endorsed by the self-directed IRA custodian. And I'd like to thank Quest and Nate for letting us do this together again. We greatly appreciate it. I'm going to kind of start out with kind of the basics on as far as what is a note and kind of how it's created and everything else. So a note, it's a financial instrument where one party agrees to pay a specific sum of money to another party under specific terms. And an example of that could be something like $20,000 at 4% interest rate over 5 years. Now, your mortgage actually secures or ties the note to real property and is made by the borrower to the lender, pledging the property until the note is paid in full. Now, if the borrower fails to pay the note, then the lender has the right to take back the property in a process we all know as foreclosure, just to get the property back, and then the note goes away. We invest typically in two different spaces. We invest in first liens or first mortgages, or second liens and second mortgages. And I'm only going to touch over a couple of things here on each one of them, because we can kind of go deep with everything and all the differences between them. But typically, your first mortgages, the price points are higher than the second mortgages, and we're seeing 10% to 50% of value depending on where they're at, the condition that they're in, and that's kind of what we're buying them at now. One of the advantages of the first mortgage is that you are in the first position. So anything that is below you, you have the opportunity to, if you have to foreclose on it, you can wipe everything out below you, and you're typically in the driver's seat with the first mortgage. On the second mortgages, a lot of people don't believe this, or they don't know this, but you do have control of the property if you do buy a second mortgage. You have more control than you realize. And the due diligence process is quite a bit different from the seconds to the first in how you evaluate them, and they are cheaper than the first, but the evaluation process is much more different. One thing that we do with all of our portfolio is that we have secured real estate. We don't buy any notes that are unsecured. We make sure there's something tangible tied to that. That way we protect our interest and our investors' interest. And typically with our investors, we start giving them the returns back at the end of Q2 and Q3 of the investing cycle. And we typically have a 3-year capital lock on the capital, and after the third year, we start returning the capital with them in that space. And I've got a graph a little later on down in the presentation that kind of explains that better. But as with everything, there is a chance of losing the investment, but we invest in different areas and in multiple assets to minimize our exposure for ourselves and our investors. One thing like Nate was talking about earlier is that we all want to invest in what we know and what we understand. And we want to make sure that people that we invest with kind of have expectations and understand what we're doing and kind of understand the process and make sure they're comfortable with everything. That way they know what to expect, and everything's kind of on the up and up, and it's kind of an open book. Now, in today's stock market, it's tough to make above a 7% return. And that's where we come in, and we basically make the bad debt that we buy from the hedge funds into an asset, a high yielding asset. We do that by spreading risk across several assets in several different markets. We purchase notes in large pools from hedge funds, and combined with our due diligence, our risk is minimized to help give better returns to ourselves and our investors. When we typically buy our large pools, we get premium prices when we work with the hedge funds that we work with. Once again, I can't emphasize this enough that we everything that we buy does have a piece of tangible real estate tied to it. We don't buy anything that is unsecured. So there is something that we can actually touch and feel, if you will, to make sure it's covering our investment. One of our main priorities that we like to do as a company is we like to do remodifications on homeowners. And by doing this, we have high-yielding monthly mortgage payments coming to us. We see a lot better returns that way than if we had to go through a foreclosure or a deed in lieu. So it's kind of a win-win situation that we try to keep everybody in their home that we can, and try to make it where they can make their payments, and it creates a win-win situation. Now here, this is where our team excels in creative exit strategies that we really boost our yields up. Whether we do modifications or deed in lieus, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, or at a worst case a foreclosure if we have to. But our team is really creative and helps create win-win situations for the borrowers and for ourselves and our investors. One of our top priorities, like I said before, was keeping people in their homes. This is an area where I think we all can agree that the banks and government have failed, and we as smaller investors have a chance to help fill that void. We don't have the regulations or the restrictions that the bigger banks do, and we can move a lot quicker and faster than they can as well. And it's one of our top priorities is keeping people in their homes. That way they can realize that home ownership value. So how is it that an everyday investor like you and I can play in the same arena as these giant institutions with trillions of dollars? Until recently, we couldn't. Individual investors have not had access to a significant note opportunities. Then came the subprime crisis of 2007 to 2008. We all remember that the recession began due to lenders issuing subprime mortgages as a way to satisfy mortgage demands and make millions in fees for themselves. However, when that imploded, because homeowners could not meet their payments and interest rates escalated, the government stepped in and issued bailouts. TARP was a $700 billion bailout. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae got another $400 billion shortly thereafter, and bank after bank was going under because they could not meet their reserve requirements. If you want to watch a couple movies that kind of really give really good examples of what all happened and kind of what happened on Wall Street during this chaos and chaotic event. One of them is Too Big to Fail, and the other one is Margin Call. It really gives a bird's eye view of what happened in Wall Street and how things got kind of really discombobulated, for lack of a better word. Now, we're hearing that there are still $800 billion in delinquent mortgages that they haven't made a payment in over 60 days. That's $800 billion with a B. That's incredible for the amount of product that's still out there, the amount of people that really need our assistance that are kind of falling through the cracks. We invest in notes for the high-yielding passive investments and self-directed IRAs, and even outside of the IRA. It helps us build wealth. It helps us build our retirement, and it helps keep our dollars working for us. As Nate said earlier, it's about knowing what your investments are doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we feel that notes give us the best opportunity to get the best rates of return, the best yields, and always keep our dollars working for us, even when we're sleeping, whether we're on a beach, or whatever we're doing for our leisure time. The banks have been taking advantage of this for many, many years now, and the opportunity is available to us. And I really think that this is an area that we really need to take advantage of. It's going to help keep the American dream alive. It's going to help keep the dream of home ownership alive for America. And as we're going through this recovery and stuff, this is how us as smaller investors can help kind of right the ship that Wall Street and Washington D.C. kind of created with everything. There are several different ways that you can invest in notes. Being if you have cash, that's always an easy way. But even self-directed IRAs, anything that Nate was talking about, any account, whether it be an ESA, an HSA, self-directed 401k, the Roth IRA, any account that Quest has, they can invest in notes as well, defaulted mortgage notes. And you can even invest in notes with trusts, which it's kind of interesting to do. And it gives you the opportunity to buy performing notes, non-performing notes. You can even invest in a note fund. And kind of the best thing about this is everything is passive in it. All the investments here are passive to you. You're not really putting any work effort into it, and you're just letting your money work for you. That's the beauty of this right here. Now the graph might be a little hard to see, but this is an example of what a $100,000 investment would do over 5 years. And as you can see, there are no returns for the first and second quarter of the first year, but by the end of the first year, you have caught up and received a 12% return on your original investment. And for the first 3 years, yield a projected return of $12,000 per year. And after the fourth year, your principal lock is lifted, and you will see a greater return with your capital. You'll see a greater return with your capital built back into your quarterly earnings. And at the end of your fifth year, you will have earned $60,000, and your capital will be paid in full. That's a lot better rate of return than you're going to get in the stock market. This is the end of my presentation. I want to thank Nate with Quest, and I appreciate your all's time. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or ask them on the webinar, or you have our contact information here. And call us or email us if you have any questions. We'd greatly be willing to answer any questions you might have. I want to thank everybody. Is there anything else, Nate, that you want to talk about? Or
No, I want to thank you guys as well. I think we do have a couple questions on there on the question board, but again, thank you for inviting us and incorporating Quest. Appreciate it.
Okay.
And if you guys are seeing the questions there, I think one is directed toward you guys. It says, do you deal with accredited or non-accredited investors?
We do. I'm trying to, my screen is a little bit, how can I do this here? There we go. All right. We deal with both accredited and non-accredited investors for Noreen. As far as due diligence goes, we do everything from, it depends on what we're buying with our due diligence. If we're looking at second mortgages, we're focusing more on the credit score and the emotional equity that's tied into the house. If the house is occupied, we've got a whole list. If you want to email me, I can kind of give you kind of what we do for our due diligence. If we're looking at first mortgages, we do everything from pulling BPOs, having a real estate agent go by and taking a look at the house, giving their opinion, make sure it's occupied, unoccupied, depending on where it's at, if it's trashed out. I know if we're kind of looking down in the kind of the war zones, a lot of the areas of the copper thieves that came in, and then everything's just kind of cleaned out of it. So that's what we typically look at with our due diligence.
It looks like there was one other question, second part of Beth Golden. She was asking what movies you were mentioning about Wall Street.
One of them is Too Big to Fail, and the other one is Margin Call. For Beth, it's called Margin Call, CALL. For Lizette, if you want to contact us after the webinar and stuff, we can talk more about the minimum required. For Todd, yeah, there is a different states. We typically kind of hit Florida, Missouri, Ohio, and the Carolinas. We try to hit. There's a program with the federal government called the Hardest Hit Fund State, Hardest Hit Fund States, and there's some government money that's tied to that. That if you want to call me offline, we can talk about that. But those are the 5 markets that we have. But we also, I'm never opposed to looking at good deals. That question was for Todd. For Noreen, we do residential and commercial properties. It's kind of, we do both, kind of everything that's under the sun. Perfect. I think we got everything answered there, I think. If anybody has any other questions, you can feel free to email me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about things and go from there. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off. Nate, is there anything else you need to add, Nate, or are we good?
No, that was it. I appreciate it. Great webinar, guys.
Perfect. Thank you.